Good morning, everyone. My name is Mighty Stream. I'm going to do May 12th, Spiritual Principle a Day in a Meditation. I hope you're doing well this morning. I'm a little bit delayed, but not denied. Okay, let's go into the meditation. The title of the meditation for today is Surrender to What? Surrender to what? It says, surrender is what happens after we've accepted the first step as something that is true for us and have accepted that recovery is the solution. That comes from the NA Step Working Guide, Step 1, Surrender. Our first introduction to the steps often stirs up a powerful rebelliousness. All my life, I've felt disempowered. Now you're telling me that I'm powerless and that I have to surrender every day? Many of us ask. While NA is truly a program of action, we also strive to understand the ideals, concepts, and spiritual principles that underpin this new way of life. Before we got clean, surrendered to most of us meant the inconceivable, showing weakness. In many of the neighborhoods we came up in, surrendering would threaten our very survival. For others, the thought of losing or being wrong, and worst of all, admitting it, defied the very core of our being. We'd rather go down fighting than accept defeat, especially if others would know about it. Once we better understand the first step in the concept of surrender, we realize that we've already admitted defeat when we've come through the door of an NA meeting. No one gets here by accident, our sponsor says. Okay, we now understand that we've surrendered our grip on denial. We get that our addiction has worn us down, and we are powerless over it. No matter how we fought, we couldn't make using work. And yes, we've even surrendered to the idea that surrender is a process that we must sustain by working steps, going to meetings, service, all that. But what am I surrendering to? We ask, thinking we are pretty smart. You're already doing it, our sponsor says. You're surrendering to recovery as the solution. If you want to fight for something, fight for that. Point sponsor. I'm going to take a moment to find where in my life I am still resisting recovery as the solution to my problems. I'm still a fighter, but today my fight is for recovery. Let's take a moment of silence, followed by the we version of the Serenity Prayer. Moment of silence now, please. Thank you. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things that we cannot change, the courage to change the things that we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Just for today, please and thank you. Surrendering. Yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it, where mentally we go back and forth, we vacillate between what we define surrendering as. And given each situation, I know for me, each situation that comes up, I have to be introspective, right? I have to analyze whether or not this is something that is supposed to be surrendered to. That's part of the serenity prayer, right? God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So every day I go through my life moving in wisdom, prayerfully, right? That I can know the difference between what I can change and what I cannot, what I need to accept and what I don't have to accept. And in the things that I can accept, I can have a level of surrender to them, right? Some of the things that I can change, right? I need to change them. I need to not be lazy and actually roll up my sleeves and go to work and change those things. There's some things that I'm not going to just surrender to. because the process of surrendering is more detrimental to me, right? I'm not going to surrender to being in an abusive relationship. And thank God I'm not in one today, but I've been in several. I'm not surrendering to abuse. I'm not surrendering to verbal abuse. I'm not, yeah. So when you come in here and you find out that there's a different type of surrender that doesn't include being a doormat, that's kind of a new ideal for a lot of us. It was to me. I'm gonna surrender. Okay, to what? Surrender to win? Oh, that sounds so cliche and really good to say. It sounds really fun to say it. But a lot of times that's not how it feels. And we need to be honest about that. I have to analyze that. I have to think about that because there's nothing worse. We learned the other day in our meditation, right? There's nothing worse than having a life of regrets. So I want to make sure that what I'm surrendering to is supposed to be surrendered to. That's on a situation by situation basis. By now, we should have enough sense and enough recovery and enough people in our lives to give us feedback to be able to make those decisions on a situation by situation basis. But here is the point of this meditation is that I am surrendering to the fact that I need recovery. Now, that's a big umbrella. Recovery is a large umbrella. But within that, underneath that, there's different things that I'm going to be recovering from. There's going to be different steps, different strategies, different meditations, different people, different interactions that are going to all fall under the umbrella of recovery. I'm surrendering to recovery. And in the process of surrendering to the fact that I need recovery, I'm also saying the things that fall within that realm, underneath that umbrella of recovery, I now have access to them, the privilege and the honor to be able to use them, employ them into my day-to-day living as an answer to my situations, as a solution to my problem. But I only get it after I make the surrender to recovery. After I acknowledge that recovery is the solution to what I'm going through, which is dealing with this disease of addiction. This is huge, guys. This is not a small topic, something that we want to brush off. This is what I would call a very simple meditation, a 5-star meditation, one you want to bend your page back, or you want to in the back where I make my own index under surrender, put this particular meditation, May 12th, as one of those 5-star meditations on surrender, right? If I had to just talk about surrender as a spiritual principle, this would be one of the top meditations I want in there because I want to make sure I understand what I'm surrendering to recovery. And so are you. Yes, you are. And you're doing a fine job. You're doing a fine, outstanding job, right? Of pursuing surrender to recovery. You're doing it on a day-to-day basis. And yeah, I'm sure your sponsor said you already have. When you came to Narcotics Anonymous, that was a surrender. But there's levels to this. And some people say, well, there's deeper levels to this or higher levels. I don't care what you want to call it. I know that the surrender I had when I first got here is different than the surrender I have right now. Right. And it has been steeped in goodness. Right. It has been steeped in goodness. There's a wealth of experience now that I've added to my initial surrender, and I'm very grateful for that. And I know that you are too. So what you going to do? What are you going to do today? To take a moment and analyze where you might be resisting recovery as the solution to your problems. Nobody's saying that you're not a fighter. Muhammad Ali wasn't about to surrender to anything. Cassius Clay, y'all remember when he used to be called Cassius Clay, right? He wasn't surrendering to anything. And he was full of hot air, but he was able to back up most, I'll say most, he was able to back up most of what he said, right? He was still a fighter. Even after he lost, he was a fighter, right? And he came back swinging and winning. And that's what we want to do. Even when we take some hits, we want to realize that we're still a fighter. And even though we're fighting a different fight today, the fight that we actually have is about and for our recovery. Because after that umbrella, everything else opens up. Everything else opens up after that surrender. My name is MightyStream. Enjoyed talking to you. Hope that you have a beautiful day on purpose. I intend to.